Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at hypnosis.
Okay.
You've given me a really interesting set of sources this time.
Yeah.
There's stuff about how hypnosis works, its
Mhm.
potential for like self-improvement.
Right.
There's even some things in here about accelerated learning techniques.
Oh.
It looks like you've highlighted a lot of sections about the subconscious mind
Yeah.
and childhood programming too.
Absolutely.
So we've got a lot to unpack.
It seems like you're really interested in how our early experiences shape who we are.
Yeah,
And hypnosis offers a really unique perspective on that.
for sure.
What's particularly interesting to me is how many of these sources emphasize the power of the subconscious mind.
Right.
It's like this hidden operating system
Yeah.
that's just running in the background and influencing our thoughts
Uh-huh.
and our behaviors in ways we're not even aware of.
You know, I was really drawn to that concept too,
Okay.
especially when I saw Paul McKenna's analogy
Oh, yeah.
in one of the articles. He compares those early experiences to hidden files in the subconscious,
Okay.
almost like software programs running behind the scenes
Right.
that affect how we react to things,
Yeah.
or even like what we believe is possible for ourselves.
That's a great way to think about it.
It is.
And hypnosis is kind of like
Yeah.
gaining access to those hidden files.
Okay.
You can understand their contents and potentially even rewrite them.
Wow.
It's really fascinating how many different approaches these sources present, though.
Uh-huh.
From Paul McKenna's indirect hypnosis
Okay.
to Sylvia Browne's focus on, like, spiritual healing.
So let's dive into that a bit more.
Sure.
What exactly is indirect hypnosis?
Hmm.
It sounds kind of mysterious.
It definitely raises some questions.
And maybe even a little sneaky.
And you're right to be curious about the ethical implications.
Yeah.
McKenna suggests that we are constantly being influenced by suggestions embedded in everyday language,
Yeah.
even when we aren't consciously aware of it. And he claims to use this technique to subtly guide listeners towards positive changes.
So it's like he's planting seeds in the subconscious mind without the listener even realizing it.
Right.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is.
But how effective can that really be if you're not like actively engaging with the process?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it gets to the heart of how hypnosis works.
Okay.
Even in more direct forms of hypnosis,
Uh-huh.
like the guided sessions you included from Sylvia Browne.
Right.
The key is bypassing the critical faculty.
The critical faculty.
Yeah.
Refresh my memory on that one.
Okay, so think of it as the part of your mind
Okay.
that's constantly analyzing,
Mm-hmm.
judging, filtering information.
Okay.
It's like a gatekeeper,
Okay.
protecting you from potentially harmful beliefs or ideas.
Interesting.
But sometimes that gatekeeper can be a little too strict,
Okay.
blocking out new possibilities
Yeah.
or preventing us from accessing those hidden files in the subconscious.
So hypnosis is a way to
Sneak past the gatekeeper.
exactly,
Interesting.
by inducing a trance state,
Okay.
which, by the way,
Yeah.
isn't about losing consciousness
Okay.
or being controlled by someone else,
Uh-huh.
but rather a state of focused attention.
Okay.
You become more receptive to suggestions.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like when you get totally absorbed in a good book or movie,
Uh-huh.
you're still aware of your surroundings,
Right.
but your focus is kind of narrowed and you're more open to the story being told.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And that state of heightened suggestibility,
Okay.
the subconscious mind is more likely to accept new ideas and beliefs,
Interesting.
even if they challenge existing ones.
Okay, so let's get back to the practical applications.
Here.
You mentioned Sylvia Browne's focus on spiritual healing.
Right.
How does that tie into hypnosis?
Brown's approach is really fascinating
Okay.
because she combines traditional hypnotic techniques
Yeah.
like guided visualizations and
Mhm.
affirmations.
With a really strong emphasis on connecting with a higher power
Okay.
or the divine.
So it's almost like a blend of psychology and spirituality.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And what's really interesting is that she sees hypnosis as a way to access
Okay.
not just the subconscious mind,
Huh?
but also what she calls the superconscious.
The superconscious.
Yeah, a realm of higher wisdom and healing.
That's definitely a different perspective from McKenna's more scientific approach.
It is.
Yeah.
And it highlights the really diverse range of beliefs
Yeah.
and applications within the world of hypnosis.
Uh-huh.
But despite these differences,
Okay.
there's this common thread
Okay.
running through all of these sources.
What is it?
It's the recognition that our thoughts, feelings, and our physical well-being
Yeah.
are all deeply interconnected.
Yeah, that mind-body connection seems to be a recurring theme.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that if we can tap into the power of the subconscious mind,
Right.
we could potentially influence not just our mental and emotional states, but also our physical health.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And you've included some interesting sources on that very topic,
Oh, yeah.
like the Stop Smoking Self-Hypnosis audio
Right?
and Randy Tomlin's work on success and goal setting.
Right. Speaking of Randy Thomas,
Yeah.
his approach seems very direct
Yes. Very direct.
and motivational.
Yeah.
He really emphasizes the importance of setting clear goals
Yeah.
and taking action.
He's very much in the no excuses camp,
Okay.
but what sets him apart, I think,
Yeah.
is his focus on the power of verbalization.
Hmm.
He encourages listeners to not just write down their goals,
Okay.
but to actually speak them out loud,
Wow.
even to inanimate objects.
To their house.
To their house, yeah.
Really?
Their car,
Wow.
even their pets.
Okay.
Thomas believes that by verbalizing our goals,
Yeah.
we're making them more real or
Oh.
tangible.
Okay.
It's like solidifying our commitment to achieving them
Yeah.
by putting them out there in the universe.
It's almost like we're holding ourselves accountable by
Exactly.
declaring our intentions.
Exactly. And that accountability,
Yeah.
even to something as seemingly insignificant as a houseplant,
Wow.
can be a really powerful motivator.
Okay. So we've got McKenna with his hidden files and indirect suggestions.
Right.
We've got Brown with her spiritual approach.
Yeah.
And then Thomas with his emphasis on verbalizing goals.
Yes.
It's amazing how many different techniques
It is
and
huge.
perspectives there are
Yeah.
within the world of hypnosis.
It really is a fascinating field.
It is.
And it's clear from the sources you've selected
Yeah.
that you're interested in exploring the practical applications of hypnosis
Absolutely.
or self-improvement.
But before we dive into that,
Right.
I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
Those trance states.
Yeah.
It seems like each source describes trance a little differently.
Right.
Can you maybe elaborate on that?
Sure. McKenna, for example, talks about trance as simply a state of focused attention.
Okay.
He points out that we all experience natural trance states every day,
Oh, really?
like daydreaming, getting lost in a book,
Okay.
even driving on autopilot.
So it's not about losing consciousness
No.
or becoming someone else.
Yeah, not all.
It's more about accessing a different level of awareness.
Precisely.
Okay.
And Brown describes trance as a state
Mm-hmm.
where you can access both the lower and upper areas of your mind,
Interesting.
the conscious and the unconscious.
Okay.
She emphasizes that it's a state of deep relaxation
Okay.
where you can release negativity
Mm-hmm.
and promote healing.
So it's like tuning out the noise of the world
Yes.
so you can listen to the whispers of your own inner wisdom.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
I like that.
Now, one thing that both McKenna and Brown highlight
Okay.
is that trance isn't always about being completely detached
Okay.
from the world around you. You can still be aware of your surroundings,
Mm-hmm.
even if your focus is primarily inward.
That's interesting.
It is.
It makes trance sound a lot less mysterious and intimidating.
Exactly. It's a very natural human experience.
Yeah.
Now, before we move on,
Yeah.
I want to circle back to the concept of suggestion.
Okay.
We've talked about how it's the key to hypnosis.
Right.
But what exactly does that mean?
Well, McKenna describes suggestions as like instructions that we give to our unconscious mind.
Right.
They can be direct, like you will stop smoking,
Right.
or indirect,
Yeah.
embedded in stories or metaphors.
And Brown talks about using affirmations,
Yeah.
positive statements repeated to oneself,
Right.
as a form of suggestion.
Okay.
She believes that by repeatedly affirming what we want to be true,
Mm-hmm.
we can reprogram our minds for positive change.
So it's almost like planting seeds in the garden of our minds
Yeah.
with repetition and nurturing.
Right.
Those seeds can grow into powerful new beliefs and behaviors.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And it highlights the importance of consistency
Okay.
in using hypnosis for self-improvement.
Yeah.
It's not a one-time fix.
Right.
It's an ongoing process of cultivating the mental and emotional states
Yeah.
that we desire.
And speaking of desire,
Yes.
one thing that's clear from all these sources is that hypnosis is most effective when the individual is genuinely motivated to change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you're not truly invested in the outcome,
Okay.
the suggestions are unlikely to take root.
Wow.
It's like trying to force a plant to grow
Right.
in unfavorable conditions.
Yeah.
It's just not going to thrive.
So the takeaway here is that hypnosis is a powerful tool. the self-improvement.
Yeah.
But it's not a magic wand.
Right.
It requires active participation and a willingness to embrace change.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears a bit
Okay.
and dive into the practical applications of hypnosis.
All right.
You've included some really compelling sources
Yeah.
on topics like smoking cessation, stress reduction,
Right.
and success strategies.
Yeah.
What are you most curious about exploring first?
Well, one area that really caught my eye was you mentioned being curious about smoking cessation. That's an area where hypnosis has shown a lot of promise.
Right.
The Stop Smoking Self-Hypnosis audio you included,
Yeah.
it really digs into how those techniques can help break the addiction. The visualization techniques in that audio really stood out to me.
Okay.
It talks about picturing your body as a glass container with this orange liquid scrubbing away all the tar and nicotine.
Weird.
It's such a vivid image.
It is.
Do you think those kinds of visualizations can really have an impact on the subconscious mind?
It's definitely tapping into the power of imagery.
Yeah.
Which, as we discussed earlier, is the language that the subconscious understands best.
Right.
It's not just about logic and willpower. It's about creating a visceral experience that can really shift those deep-seated associations with smoking.
That makes sense. And it seems like a lot of these techniques are about reframing our relationship with the problem.
Right.
The audio talks about how withdrawal symptoms aren't something to be feared, but rather a sign that the body is healing.
Exactly. It's about shifting that internal narrative from one of deprivation and struggle to one of empowerment and renewal.
Yeah.
And that positive reinforcement can be so crucial in helping people stick with their goals.
It reminds me of Rex Sykes' work on positive thinking.
Oh, yeah?
He seems to be all about reframing challenges as opportunities.
He is.
Is that something that you see across a lot of these self-improvement approaches?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sykes is a great example of how hypnosis can be used to cultivate a more optimistic and resilient mindset.
Right.
He talks about the importance of asking empowering questions. Instead of dwelling on what's wrong, focus on what's good and how you can make things even better.
So it's like changing the channel in your mind from the negative news cycle to something more uplifting.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And it highlights the power of conscious choice in shaping our thoughts and our feelings.
Yeah.
It's not about denying negative emotions, but rather choosing how we respond to them.
Okay, so we've talked about how hypnosis can help people quit smoking and cultivate more positive outlook. What other areas does it have potential in?
Well, you've highlighted some fascinating material on accelerated learning techniques.
Yeah.
One of the articles mentions Dr. Georgi Lozanov's super learning methods, which involve using relaxation music to activate alpha brainwaves.
I was intrigued by that.
Okay.
Is there any scientific evidence to support those claims?
It's definitely an area where science and hypnosis intersect. And while the research is still ongoing, there is growing evidence that certain brainwave states, like alpha waves, are associated with enhanced learning and memory retention.
So by inducing those relaxed, receptive brainwave states through hypnosis, you're essentially creating optimal conditions for the brain to absorb new information?
Exactly. And it's not just about relaxation.
Okay.
Lozanov's method also incorporates techniques like visualization and storytelling to further engage the subconscious mind.
It's almost like turning learning into a more immersive and enjoyable experience rather than a chore.
That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that makes hypnosis so powerful. It can tap into the natural abilities of the mind and amplify them.
Okay, so we've explored some of the potential benefits of hypnosis.
We have.
But what about the potential risks? Is there any downside to tapping into the subconscious mind?
That's a really important question.
Yeah.
And like any powerful tool, hypnosis should be approached with respect and caution.
Okay.
One of the biggest concerns people have is the idea of being controlled or manipulated.
Right.
Especially with techniques like indirect hypnosis.
Right. We talked earlier about McKenna's claims of embedding suggestions in everyday language. That raises some ethical questions for sure.
Absolutely. And it's why finding a qualified and ethical hypnotist is so crucial.
Okay.
They should be transparent about their methods.
Right.
And always prioritize the client's well-being
and
autonomy.
So it's not just about the techniques themselves.
It's not.
But also the intention and integrity of the practitioner.
Exactly.
Yep.
And a responsible hypnotist will always work collaboratively with the client, making sure they feel safe and empowered throughout the process.
Speaking of feeling safe, I've heard some people worry that hypnosis can be dangerous. Or that you might get stuck in a trance state. Is there any truth to those concerns?
Those are really common misconceptions. Fueled by Hollywood portrayals of hypnosis.
Right.
The reality is that you can't be hypnotized against your will. And you can emerge from a trance state at any time.
Interesting.
It's like that analogy we used earlier of getting absorbed in a book. You could always put the book down. And return to your normal awareness.
So it's not about losing control.
No.
But rather choosing to focus your attention in a specific way.
Precisely. And a skilled hypnotist will guide you through the process safely and effectively.
You mentioned the importance of finding a qualified hypnotist.
I did.
What are some things people should look for when choosing a practitioner?
That's a great question. Professional organizations like the National Guild of Hypnotists and the American Society of Clinical Hypnosis have standards of practice and ethical guidelines for their members. So looking for a hypnotist who is certified by one of these organizations is a good starting point.
So it's like checking a doctor's credentials.
Exactly.
Before scheduling an appointment.
Right.
It gives you some assurance that they have the necessary training and expertise.
Absolutely. And it's also a good idea to schedule a consultation with a hypnotist before committing to a session. It's a chance to ask questions, get a sense of their style, and make sure you feel comfortable with them.
Trust and rapport are so important in any therapeutic relationship. You need to feel confident that you're in good hands.
Absolutely. And one thing I would add is that it's important to have realistic expectations. Hypnosis is not a magic bullet. It requires effort and commitment on the part of the individual.
It's a tool, not a quick fix.
Exactly.
And like any tool, it takes practice and skill to use it effectively. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, exploring the various techniques, applications, and even some of the ethical considerations surrounding hypnosis. What are some of the key takeaways that you'd like listeners to walk away with?
I think one of the most important things to remember is that hypnosis is a natural human ability. We all have the capacity to tap into the power of the subconscious mind. And while it's essential to approach it with respect and caution, it also offers incredible potential for positive change.
That's a great point.
So whether you're looking to break a bad habit, improve your performance, or simply cultivate a more peaceful and fulfilling life, hypnosis can be a valuable tool on that journey.
It's empowering to know that we have more control over our minds and our lives than we often realize.
It is.
As we wrap up this part of the deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with this question to ponder. What if you could reprogram your mind for any positive change? What would it be?
That's a powerful question.
It is.
And the answer is different for everyone. But the journey begins with awareness. Recognizing the power of our own minds. And choosing to use that power for good. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, one area that I've always been fascinated by is, as we've been talking about all these different techniques and applications, I keep coming back to this idea of self-discovery. It seems like hypnosis isn't just about making changes, but also about understanding ourselves on a deeper level.
That's a really insightful observation.
And
you're right, hypnosis can be a really powerful tool for self-exploration. It's like shining a light into the hidden corners of the mind. Revealing patterns and beliefs and motivations that we might not even be aware of.
And that self-awareness seems so crucial.
It is.
For making any kind of lasting change.
Absolutely.
Whether it's breaking a habit or achieving a goal.
It's like that old saying.
What is it?
Know thyself. Hypnosis can help us peel back those layers of conditioning and limiting beliefs, allowing us to connect with our authentic selves and tap into our true potential.
It's almost like a journey inward. A process of uncovering those hidden treasures within. It reminds me of Sylvia Browne's approach, that blend of psychology and spirituality.
Browne's work is a great example of how hypnosis can be used for more than just treating symptoms or achieving specific outcomes. It can be a path to greater self-understanding and spiritual growth.
And it seems like that inner exploration can be both empowering and challenging.
Definitely. It's not always easy to confront those shadow aspects of ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, those limiting beliefs or negative patterns.
Right.
That might be holding us back.
Okay.
But by bringing those things into the light of awareness, we can begin to transform them.
And that transformation seems to be a key theme in a lot of these self-improvement approaches.
Yeah. It's not about fixing what's broken.
Right.
But about evolving and growing into the best versions of ourselves.
So we've talked about self-discovery, transformation, even spiritual growth.
Okay.
But one thing I'm still curious about is how all of this relates to creativity. Does hypnosis have any role to play?
It does.
In unlocking our creative potential?
That's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
And the answer is a resounding yes.
Really?
Remember how we talked about the subconscious mind being the seat of imagination and intuition?
Right.
Well, hypnosis can help us access those creative resources that often lie dormant beneath the surface.
So it's like bypassing those inner critics and filters
that
can block creative flow?
Hypnosis can help us quiet those critical voices.
Okay.
And tap into a state of open-mindedness and receptivity.
Right.
Allowing those creative sparks to ignite.
And is there a specific technique that's particularly effective for boosting creativity?
There are a number of techniques that can be really helpful.
Like what?
Guided visualizations, for example, can be used to create a mental space where you feel free to explore new ideas and possibilities.
Interesting.
And affirmations can help to reprogram the subconscious mind with positive beliefs about your creative abilities.
So it's almost like giving yourself permission to play, to experiment, and to embrace those aha moments of inspiration.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And when we approach creativity with that sense of playfulness and curiosity, amazing things can happen.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
In this deep dive into the world of hypnosis.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It has.
From understanding the science of trance states to exploring its practical applications for self-improvement.
Right.
And even creativity.
Yeah.
What's really striking is how much potential lies within each of us.
I agree.
Hypnosis simply provides a key to unlock those hidden doors and tap into those inner resources.
And as we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Yeah.
The journey begins with a single step.
It does.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.